Did John D. Lee tell the truth about the Mountain Meadows Massacre? Historian Mel Johnson is going to give his opinion in just a moment.
Hello, I'm Troy Abels from Hanford, California, and you are listening to Gospel Tangents.
Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. There is a dispute among historians about whether Brigham Young knew about the massacre before or shortly thereafter. Did John D. Lee lie to him, or did he tell the truth? Historian Mel Johnson is going to give his opinion on the rest of the Mountain Meadows Massacre, and we'll talk about John's further involvement in it and his criticism of it. Was his life on the line? Check out a conversation.
The story is this. The massacre is carried out, and John is raising Cain down in Washington Ward. Harrison Pierce is a counselor, Robert Covington is the bishop, and quite a number of these men have been involved in the killing field. And now you got John Hawley acting almighty and righteous and calling you out for murder. And of course that scares everybody to death, because everybody supposedly took the covenant up on the killing field that what happens in Mountain Meadows Oasis stays in Mountain Meadows Oasis. So a secret meeting is held of the priesthood in Washington. And by a narrow vote, Hawley is allowed to live. Uncle Billy Young, a relative to George Hawley by marriage, is sent to caution John. Don't talk. Keep your mouth shut. You were nearly sent across lots. And Hawley's writing all of this in his autobiography 30 years later. And that's the interesting thing. Whether you read Turley Leonard Walker, Juanita Brooks, Will Bagley, or Barbara Jones, when she publishes, we still have all of these buts, what ifs, I'm not sure. And that is the issue of history. We need to be very careful that we don't carry the modern fallacy of presentism to take our values today and put it on those people in southern Utah that have been driven for 25 years. Yes, they dealt hard. They dealt as well as they got dealt with. But we don't know the whole story. We do not know the whole story, and I don't think we ever will.
And they might not have known the whole story either.
Well, Brigham Young argued that he didn't know the story for a long time after. I agree with Will Bagley and others that John D. Lee did not lie to Young, and that Jacob Hamlin told him the truth within 2 weeks. Hamlin is reciting secondhand what the killers had told him.
So you're saying that, okay, because I know Barbara said that John D. Lee went up, I want to say September 29th, to Salt Lake to talk to Brigham, and Barbara says that John D. Lee lied and blamed it on the Indians.
That has been one of the standards of protection for President Young for a very long time, that John D. Lee lied.
Okay, so you're saying that Will Bagley believes that John D. Lee told Brigham the truth right from the get-go.
And I do too.
You do too.
And
Okay.
some other historians do. And Jacob Hamlin was up there within 10 or 11 days. And I can't imagine.
Well, Jacob wasn't part of the massacre.
No, he was not. He would be repeating what he heard secondhand. But everybody lived in everybody's hip pocket down there. You know, we have this idea that Dixie is this vast place, which it is, that takes forever for people and information to travel. No, on horseback from what is now Panguitch, or say Circleville, the fort there, is no more than a 2-day travel down to Santa Clara. Native Americans, Mormons, other whites, Mexicans, and what they know are moving through this area all the time. It's fluid, and it's constant.
How long is it from Cedar City to Salt Lake then by horseback?
The rider made it in 4 days and then 5 days back, something like that. And I don't know if he was killing his horses, but they were close to it when he would exchange for another horse. So you could have had an exact message by somebody we don't know up to Brigham Young within 6 days. We say it happened on September 11th, the killing. It is possible that people in Salt Lake would have known by the 17th or 18th. And then we have Hamlin and John D. Lee there shortly thereafter. And remember, California newspapers were printing the story within 3 weeks. So
the beginning of October, essentially?
Yeah. First 10 days of October, which would be almost a month, so before that. Yeah. Terrible story. Hawley says he was not part of it, and he condemned it. What is interesting is that the little lumber community of Pine Valley begins being assembled in the late summer of 1856 and into full swing in 1857. This is at the same time as the massacre, only 9 or 10 miles away. Hawley is the presiding elder chosen for Pine Valley. He will remain presiding elder for almost a decade before he's replaced by William Snow, Erastus Snow's brother, as bishop. Hawley does a good job as a presiding elder. He's also the civil leader in the logging community. And he's certainly not the richest, not by any stance. He's probably in the lower 50% instead of the upper 50% of men in wealth and prestige. But he's the presiding elder. They build roads. They apportion timber to the various sawmills. They have a schoolhouse. They have a church house. Hawley preaches from the pulpit, calls out Lorenzo Brown several times for behavior. He preaches down in St. George on the square when the community is being built. He is called on a short-time mission, as so many were, to either go north to preach to saints or to go south to preach to saints or to go to Manti for a few weeks to preach to saints. He is an active leader. He's one of those middle cogs in the Latter-day Saint machine of thousands of men and women who do their callings honorably and to the best of their ability. And a decade flies by very quickly. St. George is established. The tabernacle is starting to be raised. The temple is starting to be raised. Pine Valley is supplying lumber. The roads are being improved. Trade is being established with eastern Nevada to the mines and the LDS families out there. And Hawley is a Mormon of Mormons. He is honored in his community. In 1868, he is not chosen as bishop. And I believe with a number of other historians, that was because he was not valiant, but that he was not a polygamist. something, issue that he had struggled with for many, many years.
So let me make sure I'm understanding. So you're saying he was the presiding elder up until then, and then it got big enough to be a ward, and so...
William Snow, the polygamous brother of Erastus Snow, was chosen by Erastus.
The bishop instead of the presiding elder.
And the presiding elder, Hawley, became the first counselor. And Harrison Pierce, one of the murderers, became the second counselor.
Murderers in Mountain Meadows.
Yeah.
Okay.
Harrison was one of the people, I believe, that was calling for Hawley to be executed 10 years earlier. Mormon sociology is very interesting. It never fails to impress me. In 1868, no, let me back up. John is not called as bishop because he's not a polygamist. Samuel Knight, the stepson of Lydia Knight and her first husband, Newell Knight, of the great Ponca Camp story, is a monogamist, and he will not be chosen for the St. George Stake High Council until after Erastus Snow dies. There are several other men like that do not become bishops or high councilmen or in the stake presidency or whatever, because they're monogamous. Erastus Snow was really hard on that.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with historian Mel Johnson. Polygamy was such a big deal in early 1800s Utah that John Pierce Hawley was passed over because he wasn't a polygamist. Did he consider becoming a polygamist?
John pulls the wagon out, crosses Little Pinto Creek to the north, and the axle fell off. Rear axle fell off. Robert Hawley, his great-grandson, who is now gone to the ages, told me the family lore is that John took that as a sign from God that he was not to take a second wife.
If you'd like a transcript of this conversation, we'll have it out shortly. I'd also like to thank you for those of you who are subscribing on patreon.com. Please tell your friends. It's really helpful and will help support future documentaries and podcasts such as this. Also, make sure that you subscribe on our Facebook page at facebook.com/gospeltangents. You can get our Twitter updates at Gospel Tangents. Also, make sure that if you'd like a written copy, go to our Amazon page. You can search for that. I've got a link here, but just do a search for Gospel Tangents Interview, and you should be able to find it there. You can also purchase a transcript of this at gospeltangents.com/shop. All of those proceeds will go to me and not to Amazon, so I really encourage you to do that. Make sure that you subscribe on our Apple Podcast page. I've got a link here, but you can just do a search for Gospel Tangents there. If you'd like to get a transcript, click here. To subscribe here on YouTube, go ahead and click here. And over here, you'll see some of our other videos. Thanks for listening, and we appreciate you listening to Gospel Tangents.